Page 32, 8:45 a.m., main office. Helen Pierce had been the school secretary for nearly 30 years, but had never gotten used to the frantic pace of the mornings. She took a sip of coffee and closed her eyes, trying to think. There was a nagging splinter in her mind. Someone she was supposed to call, something she had to do. But what? Who? "My mind is a sieve," she said to Shelley Fields, a parent who often helped in the office. "I can't imagine why," Shelley laughed. "I mean, it's so peaceful around here." I think that's sarcasm. Helen grunted and got up to pour herself another cup of coffee. Already it had been one of those mornings, full of crisis. Peggy Ransom's tirade, a boy who swore at the bus driver, 2 kids who had to be sent home because of head lice, a leaky pipe in the gym. On top of that, an iguana had escaped from his cage in one of the science rooms, and it was barely 9 a.m. On mornings like this, she pictured her mind as a glass that had broken and shattered into countless tiny transparent pieces, so small you can't get them until you step on one and get cut. Back at her desk, she went over to the phone messages one by one. There were 6 messages, and she had taken care of them all. Erwin Peacock opened his door a crack and stuck out his head. "Have a minute?" he asked her. "We need to plan for the assembly this afternoon. The storyteller. There's going to be local press." "All right," Helen said. She turned to Shelley. "Can you cover the phones for 10 minutes? "Sure thing," Shelley replied. Helen disappeared inside Mr. Peacock's office. A minute later, Karen Ballard appeared in the doorway. Shelley knew Karen. Everyone did. Karen was one of the brightest, most confident students in the entire school, although today she looked a little unsure of herself. "Hello there, Karen," Shelley said. "What can I do for you?" Karen hesitated a moment, then put a piece of paper on the desk. "Lunch count and attendance sheet for 6238. "Thank you. Anything else?" "No, that's all," Karen said. She smiled and hurried out of the room. Page 34, 9 a.m. Kids rule. Rachel's silence had changed her unexpected ways. Without her voice, she had learned how to watch, how to tune in to a million little things she had never noticed. She saw the little gifts Rhonda and Jasmine gave Karen to compete for her friendship. A few days ago, Rachel spied a secret glance and shy smile between Sky and Vicky, of all people, during math. Today she noticed Bastian chewing his nails, something he never did. She glanced over at Sean. He had his head down on the desk. She wondered if he was asleep. She took out her book, a beginner flight manual, and began to read. "The bones of birds are hollow but strong. This hollowness helps them fly. It's interesting to note that airplane wings are mostly empty, filled with nothing but air." Rachel liked this passage so much she read it again. The words described exactly how she felt this morning, strong and hollow, filled with air and silence, just itching to fly. "Okay," Karen said, flitting into the room. Her eyes were bright, cheeks slightly flushed, as if she'd run all the way back. "Still no sub, huh?" "The case of the missing sub," Robert said. "Yeah, we're like orphans," Tim cried plaintively. "Speak for yourself," Bastian said. "I know who my mother is." Karen went back to Mr. Fabiano's desk and picked up a folder. "Must be the lessons plans Mr. Fab left for the sub," she said. "Here's the spelling test. Might as well get that over with, right?" "Better do something before we die of boredom," Tim muttered. "I'll give the spelling words," Jessica said. "Why you?" Christopher demanded. "Because I always get 100 on spelling tests," Jessica retorted. It was no different from any other spelling test, Rachel thought, as kids groaned and muttered and snapped open binders and pulled out blank sheets of lined paper. Jessica stood in the center of the 3 tables, slowly reading the words twice, using them in a sentence, just as Mr. Fabiano always did. Perceive. Many people perceive professional athletes as rich, spoiled, selfish individuals. "Not!" Bastian yelled. "Quiet," Jessica said. "The next word is souvenir. Souvenir. When Christopher went to Disney World, his father bought him a stuffed Mickey Mouse as a souvenir of the trip. Hardy, har, har," Christopher said. It was 9:30 by the time they had finished the test, handed out the answer key, corrected their answer, compared scores, and written their misspelled words on the back of the writing folders. "So what do we do now?" Robert asked, slumping in his seat. I'm taking a nap, Bastian announced, lying down on the floor. Wake me up when somebody shows up. If somebody shows up. Show off, Rhonda said. You wouldn't do that if Mr. Fab was here. This is getting a little freaky, Tim said. Welcome to the Twilight Zone, Christopher put in. Yeah. What's the deal, Vicky asked. She turned to look at Karen. What did they say about the sub when you went to the office? Nothing, Karen said. Nothing? Nope, Karen said, shrugging. They didn't say a thing, because I didn't tell them. Bastian sat up. Everyone looked at Karen. Didn't tell them, Rhonda asked. Why not? Don't you guys get it? Karen asked. She leaned forward and snapped her fingers, eyes bright with excitement. There's obviously been some kind of major mix-up. They forgot about us. So? Rhonda said. So I started thinking. Why tell anybody? Karen said. I figured, let's run this class ourselves. Yes, Christopher said, making a fist. He jumped up and started goose-stepping across the floor. We can do it, Karen said. I know we can. Kids looked around at one another, smiling, giggling nervously. Missy looked over at Rachel. They raised their eyebrows at the exact same time. Very true, Jasmine agreed. I mean, if we can't run the class for one day, we're a total bunch of losers. I'm with you, Jordan said. Me too, said Robert and Corey. Count me in, Bastian said. Kids rule, kids rule, kids rule. Sure, why not? Vicky asked. Why not? Jessica asked. Are you kidding? It's illegal, that's why not. Everyone stared at her. Opinion, Christopher said. Yeah, are you sure? Karen asked. It's wrong, it's dangerous. Somebody could get hurt, Jessica said, glaring at Karen. Mr. Fab would want us to go down to the office and tell them right now. I can't believe you didn't tell them. Rachel wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to Missy. Wait a sec, Missy said. Rachel wants to say something. Ah, Bastian said, the silent pilot speaks. Be quiet, Missy told them. She took Rachel's note and read it aloud. I wouldn't be so sure of that. Oh, sure, Jessica said, making a face at Rachel. Sure, Mr. Fab would just love the idea of us being totally unsupervised all day while he's gone. Give me a break. This is the dumbest, stupidest, most asinine idea I've ever heard of. Opinion? Christopher smirked. Missy picked up another note from Rachel and read it aloud. I think Mr. Fabiano would want us to think and talk about it and then decide. He's always talking about moral decisions. I don't believe this, Jessica shook her head. Look, Mr. Fab isn't here, Jasmine pointed out. We have to do what we think is right, right? I'm for it, Skye said quietly. Kids rule, Bastian and Tim chanted. Kids rule, kids rule, kids rule. Shush, Missy said. We should take a vote. We should not vote, Jessica said, banging her desk. It's the most demented idea I've ever heard since my sister tried to put the cat in the dryer. What are you worried about? Bastian asked. What could possibly happen? This school is crawling with teachers. Fact, Christopher said. Let's vote and get on with it, Karen said. Who votes we should run the class ourselves today? An instant crop of raised hands. Who votes no? Jessica stuck out her long arms straight up into the air. 14-1, Karen said. Fact! Christopher grinned and crossed his arms. They all looked at Jessica. Sorry, Stringbean. Looks like you lose, Bastian said. You gonna go squeal? Shut your face, Jessica hissed at him. What I do and when I do it is none of your business. Hey, let's all chill, Jasmine said. For a moment, no one did anything but breathe. Okay, so what's next, Vicky asked quietly. Party time, Tim cried. Flash drafts, Missy said, pointing at the schedule printed on the blackboard. Writing. Oh, come on, Bastian moaned. Vicky went over to the tape player. Soon a mellow jazz began to fill the classroom. Mr. Fab believed in a daily schedule with as few surprises as possible. Spelling, flash drafts, music, computer lab, one every other day, math, connections, more writing, lunch, deer, exploration, science. To keep things predictable, he had certain rituals, like playing music during writing time. Rachel hadn't liked the music at first, but with time she found that it got her in the mood to write and actually helped her concentration. This is stupid, Bastian said. I don't feel like writing. I'm not in the mood. Morning time is writing time, Vicky said, repeating one of Mr. Fabiano's favorite lines. Shut up, shrimp, Bastian muttered. Vicky was the shortest girl in the 6th grade. Hey, that's a put-down, Jasmine said, glaring at him. Ooh, Bastian mocked, raising his hands. A put-down, gee whiz, that's bad. I don't know about you guys, Karen said, but I'm going to write. I can't believe this, Bastian sighed. Jessica sat at her desk, arms folded. After a minute, she snapped open her binder and pulled out a blank piece of paper. The minute Rachel closed her eyes, she got a picture of Tommy Feathers, the way he used to grin at her whenever she glanced his way. She didn't have to wonder how Tommy would have voted. He would have voted with the majority because Tommy wanted people to like him. Tommy wasn't a very good writer, but he liked to write. At the beginning of writing time, he would often lean over to Rachel and whisper, "I'm going to write a story for you." He hummed loudly while he worked, and after about 10 minutes, he'd pass the paper over to her. "That's for you, Rachel." He gave her dozens of stories like this. Every day, she threw them away. She hadn't kept a single one. She tried not to think about that now. She tried hard to put Tommy's face and voice out of her mind. Around her, Rachel could see the other kids stretching and fidgeting as they started to write. She took out her favorite pen, opened to a blank piece of notebook paper, and tried to clear her head. Writing words is like flying, Rachel thought. Words aren't solid. Words are lighter than air. Even so, they can sometimes give you a lift. So, Grant, and anyone else who's listening to this, you need to stop and write in your notebook your reactions to what I just read. The next chapter is on page 42, but I'm going to give you some time to write.